Hey everyone, this is Dark Knight from Method Gaming, and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. In this one, I want to talk about fusions in general. Basically, I want to cover what they are at their very basic meaning, how they can benefit you, in what ways, and of course, how to best prepare for future fusions. Now, the thing is, and this was an idea which came to me after seeing some of Bionic's videos. In one of the videos, he said that he is mostly preparing as a free-to-play player, mostly preparing for fusions for most of the time because fusions are usually the time where you can actually get a legendary character by just hoarding resources and by spending them wisely for a limited time period. And it's a guaranteed character that it doesn't have to you don't have to worry about pulling that character from shards, for example. The randomness factor basically is gone, and you can make a decision on whether you want to go for a fusion or not based on that. So this is kind of what got me thinking about this, and I think it's actually a very good way of going about it. If you're a free-to-play player, if you're a low spender, or any account really, I think it's important for us as players to be prepared for these events because, as you have seen in the last 6 or so months, we've had, I think, 5 fusions maybe. So it's basically one fusion per month, give or take. So I think it's important for us as players to prepare for those during the downtime when there are no fusions, or if we do decide to skip a fusion, for example, because we don't like the character, or we're just not interested, or we don't think we'll be able to get everything on time. If you do decide to skip a fusion, you can always make sure use that time to make sure that you're prepared for the next one. But let's go back to the basics. What is a fusion? Now, if you're a new player and have been playing Raid for a little while and you're not exactly sure what I'm even talking about, well, basically a fusion is another way of getting a champion or champions in the game. Now, the most common way is, of course, the shards. You've got mystery shards, ancient shards, void shards, sacred shards. All of those have specific chances of giving you champions based on rarity. So you've got legendaries, you've got epics, rares, and so on and so forth, going from the most sought after and uncommon ones to the really common heroes that you get from mystery shards, for example. So this is all RNG though. So for example, if you're pulling ancient shards, you have chances of getting a rare, epic, or a legendary, but if you actually take a look at your chances, you will see that it's going to be mostly rares that you're going to get from those ancient shards. You have an 8% chance of an epic, and you can't even choose which epic you get, a 0.5% of a legendary, again completely random. So this while this is a fun mechanic to use if you're a spender and you just want to have some fun, get some dopamine out of pulling shards and getting some fun stuff. Normally, a free-to-play player would not have that many shards to pull, and we put myself in that position as well. We would basically wait for double chance events where we have double the chances to summon a higher tier um, champions, and that would basically give us the best bang for our buck. But the other thing that allows us to get champions among, for example, login rewards and so on and so forth. So there are other ways of getting champions besides mystery shards and fusions. But the other more common way is a fusion. Now there are several fusions which are available from the start and are not time limited, such as Breda Keeper, such as Broadmaw, such as Razin Scarhide, although you can only fuse Razin once, that's why you don't see that fusion here. But if you're a new player and haven't fused Razin yet, you'll see it here as well. And as you can see, you basically require lower level or lower rarity champions to basically fuse into higher rarity champions, then which you then use again to fuse into a higher tier of champion. This is the case with Broadmaw, who is an epic. Same goes for Relic Keeper, who is also an epic. But the thing I want to talk about the most are the time limited fusion events, which are usually for legendary champions. Those are basically the most important to make sure that you're preparing for, because they are time limited. You can take all the time in the world to fuse a Relic Keeper or a Broadmaw if you want them, but there's really no rush on that. You can wait and just get whatever you need without having to spend any extra resources on getting them, because you're not pressed for time. But with such limited time fusions, you are actually pressed for time, and there are certain things that you want to make sure that you're doing in order to get the most out of those fusions. Now, the first thing is, for limited time fusions, you usually get one of these news updates like this one, where they tell you what the fusion is, which champion you're getting, as well as the champions required to fuse. In this case, the legendary. You're going to usually need 4 epic champions, and those 4 epic champions can be fused from 4 rare champions. So it's kind of like a pyramid. You start off with the rares. If you don't have the epics already, you use them to fuse the epics, and then you use the epics to fuse the legendary. Now, it's not actually as easy as this, but we'll get to that in just a second. So as you can see, every epic and every legendary, there's information on where and how you can get them. For example, the Fang Cleric himself as an epic is available from the Champion Training event, which they give you the time frame for that as well. But if you can't get it from this event, you can also fuse the Fang Cleric from these 4 rares, which again you have the information on where and how to get them in this news post. Same goes for Seneschal, and so on and so forth. Now, in this particular fusion, Catacomb Counselor is the only one that is not available straight up. You have to use the rares to fuse them. Depending on the fusion that you're doing or the fusion that is up at the moment that you're watching this video, there could be different requirements. You're going to have to check that in game and make sure that you are well aware of what it is that you're going for, what it is you need, and so on. The good thing is that now it's easier. With the last few patches, they introduced a few things which make it easier for you to see what you already have and what you don't have. For example, these red dots here that you see basically tell me that I already have these characters. If I click here, I can see that in the vault I have a Fang Cleric already. If I click any of these guys, I will see that I have a copy of them in my vault. Except for Myrmidon, I don't have a copy of him, so I'm going to have to make sure I get him from a event. So if you don't have anybody, you can always check the news and make sure you know and are aware of where you can get this character. So for example, I'm looking for a Myrmidon, which is right here, so he'll be available from the Ice Golem tournament, which will start on May 18th and will continue to May 20th. So now I know when I'll be able to farm this champion out, and I can prepare beforehand. This is true for all the rares, for all the epics, and this is something that you can use to your advantage. Now, when it comes to epics, you have to realize that rares are usually easier to get than epics. So when you see, for example, when you see that this Fang Cleric is available from the Champion Training event, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's achievable, especially if you're free to play. It is, of course, achievable, but it kind of depends on how many resources you're going to have to spend in order to get that Fang Cleric. And if you realize that that's too many resources that you'll be spending, then you might actually decide to go for the rares first and not straight from the epic. So let's take a look at this Champion Training event. It's a 15-day event, and take a look to see what I mean. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the rares at the lower tiers of rewards, so we can get those more easily. But then we have the Fang Cleric at 20,000 points, which is pretty high. Even for 15 days, that's a lot of grind that you're going to have to do if you want to get the epic straight up. Usually that's the case with most fusions. The epics are harder to get. They are usually behind some sort of a paywall. So unless you've prepared for this, they're hard to get. So that's something that you should keep in mind and always be on the lookout for. If you don't have the epic, or if you can't get the epic, you can always fuse this epic from the rares, which you can get usually much easier than any of the epics. So how do you decide whether you want to go for a fusion or not? Usually there are a lot of content creators out there, including myself, who will try to get videos out as soon as possible with any information that they have, any ideas that they have for certain champions, for the fusible champions. Basically a breakdown of which ones are good, which ones you should keep, is it worth going for the fusion, and so on. So this is, if you're confused, if you can't really make up your mind whether you want to go for the fusion or not, you could take a look at YouTube and check out some of the content creators that have videos up for the fusions. Check their viewpoint and consider it for yourself and see if you agree with them, whether this fusion is worth going for or not. But even if it isn't, even if you are a completely new player and you're thinking, okay, there's no way I can get all of these characters and build them up and so on, there's no way I can do that, so there's no point in me doing the fusion. Well, you don't have to do the fusion in order to benefit from it. What I mean is this: all of these rares, like I showed you earlier, are available from different events or championships, and that means that they're usually easier to get simply because you don't have to pull shards and hope to get the exact right one that you need. And there are some really decent rares here. For example, let's take a look at Soulbound or Soulbound Boyer. Sorry, she is a very good rare to have. Also, Frozen Banshee. She is a amazing poisoner for clan boss. So if you're struggling to find a good poisoner, if you want to replace your KO for something better, she is the next step up. And in fact, she is so good that she can be used in Ultra Nightmare clan boss teams as well. So even if you just get her from the whole thing, you'll still be ahead, because you wouldn't have to pull mystery shards hoping for a rare, or you wouldn't have to pull ancient shards hoping to get specifically her, because the chances of that actually happening are kind of low. So if you didn't get her in the first season of the raid pass as a free champion, then this is actually your next best thing of getting her without having to worry about RNG. Same goes for somebody like Bulwark, who is also a clan boss specialist. These are all amazing rares which you can get, and you needn't go any further than that. Just get the rares which are good if you're a new player running a newer account, and this will be good enough. You can call it a win. Now, if you're a mid-tier account, if you're in the mid-game already, chances are you probably have most of these rares already. You've built up your Frozen Banshee. Maybe you have an extra copy like myself that you can use, so you're not too worried about getting Frozen Banshee in particular or any of the other rares. In that case, next thing you should think about is, are any of the epics worth fusing and keeping? For example, Umbro Enchantress here, actually has a really cool kit, and she can be really useful in Arena and Faction Wars and Dungeons as well. I'm not going to go into detail on her, but she is definitely one of the most interesting champions in this fusion. Also, Fang Cleric has a revive, so he would be a really good addition to a faction team. Catacomb Counselor is a poor man's Lanicus. He's got ally attack, so that's actually something that could be really useful for a clan boss team, especially if you don't have a counter attack champion. So that's something to consider as well. The Seneschal, he is I don't know. I don't think he's very good. I would say he's maybe mid tier. He could be useful because he's got taunt, so he could be useful in soaking up some of the damage that would normally go to your other party members. But that's that's kind of situational, and his taunt is for 1 turn, and it's on a 5-turn cooldown, so it's not that great. I don't think he is worth keeping, to be honest. So this is the next thing that you could look into if you don't think you'll be getting the legendary, but you think that some of these epics or any of the epics which are used in the fusion could be potentially good for your account. Then you can just build 1 or 2 of the epics that you think will be good and just call it a day, not have to worry about going all the way up to the legendary. And also another thing to take into account is that you will need all of these champions, you need to work on them. If you notice, all of the rares have 4 stars on them, 4 purple stars, and the number 40. What that means is they will need to be level 40, meaning 4 stars, because you can't have a level 3-star champion 40. The maximum is 30. So firstly you need to get them to 4 stars, then you need to level them up to level 40, and also you will need to ascend them, and that in and of itself is a lot of resources. So this is something else that you have to take into account. It's not just the events and tournaments that you're going to have to do in order to get the champions that you need. You'll also be needing to do a bit of the potion dungeons as well, and you have to keep in mind that these are open at specific days. For example, right now I have the Force Keep open, but for example the rest are locked and they open in different days. The only one that stays open all the time is the Arcane Keep, so you can leave that to farm last because it's not restricted by any time constraints. So that's something that you definitely need to take into account. You will be needing potions in order to ascend your champions that you'll be using for the fusion. So that's a lot of resources that you will need to be using. Now, the good news is right now the fusion that's going on, if you're watching that video while this fusion is going on and you're a new account, I don't think you should be worried about not getting this legendary, because I would say that he's more of an end game legendary. We don't even know if he's that good yet, and even if he is, chances are your account is not ready for him yet. So it's perfectly fine if you don't get him, if you just started playing and you realize that you don't have the resources. You don't have to wail out or spend money just yet. It's fine if you skip this fusion. But what you can do is you can prepare for the next one. And there are several ways you can do this. Firstly, like I mentioned, you can do potion dungeons whenever you're not doing anything else, not leveling up champions, or for example, let's say that you do want to level up champions but you don't have the XP boost running. Usually it's not such a great idea to be leveling up food while you don't have this XP boost running. So if you are off the XP boost and you're wondering what to do, maybe instead of leveling up champions without the XP boost, you could just go and farm out some of those keeps, potion keeps. Maybe if you take a week to do that, you will be looking at some really decent returns for your time and effort. And also they're easier than the other dungeons, so if you're getting closer to the mid game, you should have no issues doing the last few stages here. So that's the first thing that you can do, stock up on potions. Next thing is, you could also stock up on these brews here. So as you can see, I think they're unlimited. Basically, you can stack up as many as you can get. And the thing about the brews is you basically it allows you not to spend too much energy on farming up the rares and epics for the fusion, as well as the food and so on. So this will allow you to go a long way before you have to spend energy on farming up food or farming up the champions that you'll be using for the fusion. Definitely something that can help. Now these not generate, but you can basically accumulate them over time. They're usually rewards for clan boss or uh, different events and things like that. So these will come to you over time, slowly but surely, and as long as you try not to use them helter skelter, it's going to be they're going to stack up, and eventually you have enough to be able to really put a dent into the fusion, so to speak, without actually having to spend that energy on grinding champs. All right, so besides these two things, what else you can do is you can actually utilize your vault to save champions that you're not going to use, and you know you probably see a lot of videos saying or a lot of videos about, for example, top 10 champions don't eat or don't use these champions as food, or these champions are not good, they're only for food, things like that. But the truth is, you should only use champions for food if you already have copies of them, even if they're the bad ones. So for example, take a look at this one. I have a Diabolist already at 4 stars. I have her in my vault, so if I ever get a fusion where I need a Diabolist, she's ready to go. That's why I'm going to use this Diabolist here for food, basically. But if I didn't have this one here, I will definitely save a copy, at least one copy, of this rare and put it in my vault so that I can use it for a fusion if I ever need it. And if you notice, you'll see that I have a lot of rares at level 30, which I've kept and prepared basically just for exactly this, for fusions. Of course, if you're a spender, you might have a vault full of epics and legendaries, and you might not even have space for the rares. That's fine too. If you have most of the epics, you probably don't even need the rares, so you'll be able to fuse the legendaries straight from the epics and not have to worry about the rares. If you don't have the rares, you can always farm them up. So you get the idea, but it's so much easier. Just to illustrate my point, take a look at this fusion that's going on right now. It would be so much easier for me to complete this fusion with minimal effort and minimal investment of both time and resources with what I already have. I have purposefully saved up these rares in my vault, even leveled them to 30 so that they're pretty much ready to go to be leveled up to 4 stars and then to 40. So these are pretty much almost good to go. They still need work, of course. They still need to get to 40, but I can do that now that I know which ones I need. I can do that in the almost 3 weeks time that I have to do the fusion. And this is something that you should be thinking about as well. Do I have a copy of the rare? If I don't, maybe I should put it in the vault, even if it's not a good rare. They're not all good, definitely, but they can all be useful in terms of fusions. So that would be my advice, especially for free-to-play players. We don't have that many legendaries and epics. There's no reason to keep your vault empty and just save the legendaries and the epics and use the rares as foods. You will eventually more than likely need them for a fusion, and you most likely regret using some of these as food if you did this. Same goes for epics. If you noticed in my vault, I also have a decent amount of epics, which I've leveled up to 40. If I need those for a fusion, and if I don't want to spend the extra resources to farm up an extra copy, I can just use those. Now I only have the Fang Cleric out of the 4 that I need for this particular fusion, but that's fine. That's still something that can help me. I actually plan on getting a second copy of it, so I don't even plan on using this one. I'm just going to fuse him from the rares that I have. So I'm going to use these guys to get a second Fang Cleric. But if I didn't have the time or the resources to do so, having this copy already in my vault saves me time, a lot of time, and a lot of resources. Same goes for the others. Now, obviously I don't have copies of them, but I do have most of the rares that I need, so it'll be so much easier for me to get those epics and to build them up in time to fuse the legendary. So these are my tips for fusions, and generally you just, if you're free to play, low spender, you just want to make sure that you're spending your resources, your gems, your XP boosts, for example, your potions in the tavern, your chickens and everything. You want to make sure you spend them at the right time. There are always events and tournaments going on, even if there's no fusion. Usually that's the best time to farm specific areas of the game. This is almost the same with fusions. If you're looking for a specific champion that you need for the fusion, take a look at the news, check what you need, and make a plan. Basically, make a plan of what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. And this will save you a lot of resources. It'll save you from having to spend money, because usually when you panic farm, that's when you spend money unnecessarily. Usually you have quite a bit of time to do these fusions, so there's really no need to go overboard. You just need to sit down, take a look at what you have, take a look at what you need, and make a plan on how to get it. So alright guys, hopefully you found this useful. Let me know if you're going for this current fusion, and let me know if you've been trying to prepare for fusions, if you have any tips that you want to share with me and the rest of the viewers for when it comes to preparing for fusions. I think this is one of the best ways for free-to-play and low spender accounts to get legendaries, and I believe that pretty much every fusion is worth it as long as you're prepared for it and as long as you don't spend too many resources into doing it. So hopefully this was useful, guys. Don't forget that not getting the legendary doesn't necessarily mean that the fusion is going to do nothing for you. Always check the the epics. Always check the rares. See if any of them will work for your account if you're a new player, and go for them. Just try to get them, because this is usually the easiest way to get specific champions, whether they're rares or epics. This is it. It doesn't get any better than this. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.